The mahogany doors of Committee Room 2054 in the Rayburn House office building swung open, with a force that caught everyone's attention. For a moment, it felt as if time had slowed down. All eyes immediately fixating on Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary standing frozen in the doorway. Gone was the confident, poised woman who had faced down some of the toughest journalists in America. Instead, there was only an unfamiliar figure, one who exuded an air of raw desperation. Her usual sharp navy blue suit, pressed with immaculate precision, bore subtle creases, as if it had been worn through an agonizingly sleepless night. In her trembling hands, she clutched a manila folder, the one thing that could either save her career or doom it completely. Every person in the room could feel the weight of what she was carrying, and it was clear that her life, her future, hung on the fragile contents inside that folder. Across the room, Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Texas Democrat with a reputation for hard-hitting questions and non-nonsense legal expertise, sat at the committee table. Her face was carved from stone, unreadable and unyielding. Known for her background as a public defender in Dallas, Crockett had built a career out of challenging the system and defending those who needed it most. That morning, she had filed an $80 million defamation lawsuit against Leavitt, a move that threatened to obliterate the press secretary's career before her 28th birthday. The stakes had never been higher, and the atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, so intense you could almost feel it pressing down on everyone present. Leavitt, visibly shaking, spoke for the first time, her voice cracking in a way that it never had in any of her hundreds of press briefings. "I need to speak with you before this goes any further." Her words hovered in the air, fragile and desperate. The entire room fell into complete silence. The only sound, the faint hum of cameras as C-SPAN rolled and reporters' fingers hovered over their phones, ready to capture whatever was about to unfold. The room, which had been filled with the anticipation of political drama, now felt like a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding. What happened next would go down as one of the most watched and talked about moments in congressional history, racking up over 50 million views in just 24 hours. But before we dive into the moment that made Karoline Leavitt, the youngest and arguably toughest White House press secretary, literally beg her political opponent in front of Congress, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss a second of this political drama. And drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from, because this showdown is making headlines everywhere from Washington to Tokyo. To truly understand why this moment was so shocking, you need to know the backgrounds of the two women involved and what had led them to this explosive confrontation. Karoline Leavitt had built her reputation as the iron wall of the Trump administration. At just 27, she had already broken records as the youngest White House press secretary in American history. Known for her razor-sharp comebacks and unshakable composure, she had become a force to be reckoned with in the political arena. Born in New Hampshire to a middle-class family, Leavitt had worked tirelessly to climb the political ladder, starting as a college intern and eventually rising to the most powerful spokesperson position in government. Her Catholic faith and small-town roots had made her a hero to conservative America. Leavitt had proven herself time and again, whether it was standing up to reporters or taking down Hollywood legend Robert Dario during a live TV interview. Her resilience and sharp wit had earned her the nickname Gen Z Gladiator in the media, and she was admired by many for her fearless approach. Every day, Leavitt would step up to that podium in the James X. Ready press briefing room, facing down a hostile press corps with a smile that never cracked. She had deflected scandals, defended controversial policies, and turned every attack into a counteroffensive. Political insiders called her Trump's secret weapon, someone who could connect with voters while dismantling opponents with surgical precision. Her every move seemed calculated, her every word a weapon, and she had become the embodiment of the new Republican Party. Young, bold, and unapologetically fierce. But Jasmine Crockett was cut from an entirely different cloth. The representative from Texas's 30th District had spent years as a public defender in Dallas, fighting for people who had nowhere else to turn. She had taken on cases that seemed impossible and won, challenging the system and overcoming the odds. When she entered Congress, she carried that same intensity with her, bringing her legal prowess to Capitol Hill and quickly earning a reputation for her no-holds-barred questioning and committee hearings. Crockett didn't just ask questions. She performed legal autopsies on live television, dissecting the facts with precision and ruthlessness. Her background as a fighter, someone who had scrapped her way to success, had shaped her into a force to be reckoned with. Crockett had grown up in Lewis, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. She had earned her law degree through sheer determination and student loans, and the battles she fought in the courtroom had been a reflection of her own journey, where Leavitt represented the polished establishment of the new Republican Party. Crockett embodied the fighting spirit of progressive Democrats, a woman who had come up the hard way and was not afraid to take on the powerful. The conflict between Leavitt and Crockett had been building for months. What began as small jabs during press briefings had escalated into full-blown social media exchanges that divided the public. Millions of people picked sides, some supporting Leavitt's nonsense approach, while others rallied behind Crockett's unapologetic stand. But everything changed 3 days ago when Leavitt made a comment during a Fox News interview that would cost her everything. She had been discussing immigration policy when the host brought up Crockett's recent border security proposals. Leavitt's response was swift and cutting. Representative Crockett's so-called expertise on border security is about as authentic as her designer handbags. Some people talk about struggling Americans while wearing $3,000 suits. That's not representing the people, that's representing yourself. The comment went viral in minutes. What Leavitt didn't know was that Crockett had been recording everything, preparing a case that would bring the political world to its knees. The designer handbag remark wasn't just an insult, it was a lie. Crockett's team discovered that the handbags in question had been gifts from her late grandmother, bought with savings from a lifetime of hard work as a seamstress. The suits, too, had been either gifted or purchased on sale by supporters who wanted to see her succeed. Leavitt's words had sparked outrage, and within 48 hours, Crockett's legal team filed an $80 million defamation lawsuit against Leavitt, the White House Communications Office, Fox News, and 3 major Republican donors who had allegedly helped orchestrate the smear campaign. The lawsuit didn't just target Leavitt personally, it was a direct assault on her career, her reputation, and everything she had worked for. The stakes were now higher than ever. For Leavitt, this wasn't just about money she didn't have. It was about the destruction of her future. She was facing not only financial ruin, but also the potential end of her political career. At 27, she could be forever remembered as the press secretary who cost the White House millions in a lawsuit. Her mentors were distancing themselves from her. Donors were starting to ask questions. And even Donald Trump, who had once been her strongest supporter, had remained silent on truth. Socially, it was clear that Leavitt was in deeper trouble than she had ever imagined. But for Crockett, this lawsuit wasn't just about personal vindication. It was a stand against the political machine, against the wealthy and powerful, who thought they could say anything and destroy anyone without consequences. Her fundraising efforts had exploded since filing the lawsuit, and progressive organizations across the country were rallying behind her. She was scheduled for primetime interviews on every major network. But there was more at play than just the personal stakes. There was something else, something more devastating for Leavitt that had yet to come to light. Both women had information that could destroy the other's career. Leavitt had documents suggesting that Crockett had made questionable financial decisions during her time as a public defender. Crockett, on the other hand, had recordings of Leavitt from her college days that contradicted her carefully crafted public image. This was not just a lawsuit, it was mutual assured destruction, and both women knew it. The question was, who would blink first? The tension in the room grew palpable as Leavitt took 3 hesitant steps forward, each one seeming to echo off the marble floor. The eyes of the room were fixed on her, and she could feel the weight of their scrutiny. Her usual confident stride had been replaced by something more cautious, even hesitant. Leavitt looked at Crockett across the table, trying to steady her voice. "Miss Crockett," she said, her words gaining strength as she spoke. "I know you have every reason not to listen to me, but there are important things that we need to discuss before this goes any further." Crockett didn't move. She sat at the committee table, calm and composed. Her dark eyes locked onto Leavitt with an intensity that could have melted steel. She was wearing a deep purple suit, the color of power, and every inch of her presence screamed authority. The silence stretched between them like a thick rope, and it was clear that Crockett was in control. Leavitt, once the one who had controlled every briefing, every press conference, was now at her mercy. Leavitt's voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on, feeling the eyes of the committee and the cameras that surrounded them burning into her. "I know what I said was wrong," she continued, taking another step toward the table, her heels clicking against the marble floor, echoing louder than usual in the now hushed room. But this lawsuit, $80 million, it's not just about me. You're not just coming after me. You're coming after people who had nothing to do with my comments. Staff members with families. People who Crockett's voice cut through the air like a blade. People who what? She demanded, her tone so sharp that it made several people in the gallery flint. People who thought they could destroy my reputation for political points. People who thought a black woman from St. Louis wouldn't fight back. The room froze. It was a moment of perfect stillness, and the weight of what Crockett had just said landed like a bomb. Everyone knew there had been tensions under the surface, but now it was all out in the open. Leavitt's face flushed, her jaw tightening, and her grip on the manila folder grew tighter. Was it anger? Was it embarrassment? Or perhaps it was both. That's not what this was about, Leavitt protested weakly, her voice cracking as she tried to regain control of the conversation. You know that's not. I know exactly what this was about, Crockett interrupted, standing up slowly, deliberate. She was a predator, pacing with the confidence of someone who had been waiting for this moment. You thought you could take shots at me because I'm an easy target. The angry black woman, right? The one who doesn't belong in your refined political world. No, absolutely not. Leavitt shot back, her voice suddenly louder, though still desperate. That's not it. That's not what I meant. Crockett's cold eyes locked on Leavitt, and she took another step toward her, closing the distance between them. The room could barely contain its breath, everyone watching this showdown unfold in real time. Then what was it about? Crockett demanded, her voice rising with each word. Why did you feel the need to lie about my grandmother's gifts? Why did you invent stories about my clothes? Why did the youngest press secretary in history feel the need to punch down at a freshman congresswoman? Her words struck hard, each one more powerful than the last. Leavitt opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The words had failed her, and for the first time in her political career, she looked exactly like what she was, a 27-year-old who had gotten in way over her head. She was no longer the iron-willed, unflappable press secretary who had stood up to a relentless press corps every day. She was vulnerable, exposed, and on the brink of losing everything. I have information, Leavitt suddenly blurted out, lifting the manila folder slightly, her voice filled with panic. Information that I think you need to see before. Is that a threat? Crockett's voice was a slow, lethal whisper, cutting through the tension. Are you standing in front of this committee, in front of these cameras, trying to blackmail me? Leavitt's heart skipped a beat. No, she said quickly, her words tumbling over each other in her rush to deny the accusation. No, that's not. I'm trying to explain that this situation is more complicated than. Crockett's bitter laugh echoed in the room, but there was no humor in it. Let me uncomplicate it for you, she said, her voice a blade of ice. You lied. You got caught. Now you're going to pay. That's not complicated. That's consequences. Chairman Jim Jordan, sensing the escalating tension, finally stepped in. Ladies, perhaps we should. With all due respect, Mr. Chairman. Crockett didn't even glance at him, her gaze fixed solely on Love. Miss Leavitt came here uninvited. If she has something to say, let her say it in front of everyone. No backroom deals, no secret negotiations. If she wants to beg, let her beg in the light. The word beg hung in the air like a challenge, a sharp reminder of how far Leavitt had fallen. Leavitt's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the old fire flickered in her eyes. But it died just as quickly. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and for a second it seemed like she might regain her usual composure. But then, in a move that shocked everyone in the room, including her own staff, Karoline Leavitt did something utterly unprecedented. She dropped to her knees. The room exploded. Cameras flashed like strobe lights. Reporters jumped to their feet, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Someone in the gallery gasped so loudly that the sound reverberated across the room. But Leavitt stayed there on her knees, tears beginning to form in her eyes, looking up at Crockett, a broken woman in front of the committee. Please, Leavitt's voice was barely above a whisper, cracking with emotion. I'm begging you, drop the lawsuit. Not for me. I deserve whatever you want to throw at me. But there are innocent people. Sarah Martinez, the intern who's only been with us 3 weeks. She's named in your filing. She's 22, the first in her family to graduate college. Tom Bradley, The communications assistant. He's got a daughter with special needs. The insurance from this job is the only thing keeping her in therapy. These people didn't make my comments. They don't deserve to lose everything because of my mistake. Crockett stood frozen, clearly not expecting this. The power dynamic had shifted in ways no one could have predicted. The mighty press secretary, usually the one who commanded every room, was now on her knees, begging a freshman congresswoman, who had nothing to lose, to show mercy. The image of the two women, one standing in power, the other kneeling in defeat, would become the defining image of the political drama that was unfolding. "Get up," Crockett said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of an undeniable command. "Not until you get up," she added, her words firm, her stance unwavering. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to humiliate yourself and make me look like the villain. Stand up right now or I walk out and we let the lawyers handle everything." Leavitt slowly rose to her feet, her knees shaking. Tears flowed freely down her face, streaking her makeup, leaving a visible mark of her breakdown. The manila folder in her hand was crumpled from where she had gripped it too tightly. She stood there for a moment, visibly broken, facing Crockett. "You want to know what's really pathetic?" Crockett asked, her voice carrying across the room, the accusation biting into the silence. "It's not you on your knees. It's the fact that you only care about consequences when they affect you. Where was this concern for innocent people when you were spreading lies about me? Where was this humanity when you were trying to destroy my reputation?" Leavitt's voice was small, almost inaudible. "I was doing my job. Good job." Crockett's voice rose for the first time, a crescendo of indignation. "Your job is to lie about people's grandmothers. Your job is to mock someone's family heritage. Your job is to weaponize poverty, shame against someone who actually lived it." The words hung heavy in the air, and the room seemed to hold its collective breath. The committee room had become an arena, and everyone present knew they were witnessing something far bigger than a political dispute. This was the complete dismantling of a young press secretary who had once been untouchable, now being slowly but surely torn apart by a congresswoman who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. "You have no idea what you've done," Crockett continued, her voice dropping back into that controlled, cold tone that seemed to freeze the air around them. "My grandmother worked her fingers bloody in a factory for 40 years. She saved every penny to buy me nice things to make sure I could walk into any room and belong there. And you turned that into a punchline. You turned her love into a liability." Leavitt opened her mouth to respond, but Crockett raised a hand, silencing her. "I'm not finished." The words fell on Leavitt like stones, and for the first time she had no answers. No counterattack, no way out. This wasn't just about the lies, the politics, or the game they had been playing. This was about something far deeper, about power control, and the consequences of ignoring the humanity behind the headlines. "Here's the final part of the script, completing the expanded version. You see, Miss Leavitt," Crockett continued, her voice steady and cold, "you and I are actually very similar. We're both young women trying to make it in a world that constantly tells us we don't belong. The difference is, I punch up, you punch down. I fight systems, you fight people. And that's why you're standing here destroyed by your own words while I'm about to become $80 million richer." Leavitt tried one last desperate move. "The folder. There's information about the real source of those talking points. I didn't create them. They came from who?" Crockett demanded sharply, her piercing gaze freezing the room. "Who told you to attack me? Who gave you the script?" Leavitt glanced around the room, torn every eye upon her. This was the moment of truth. "Steve Hoffman," she said finally, her voice shaking. "Senior advisor Steve Hoffman. He wrote the talking points, did the opposition research, told me to use it during the Fox interview." Sakura didn't flinch. She had expected layers of deceit, but hearing the name of one of Trump's closest advisors confirmed just how deep the rot went. "And you have proof of that?" she asked. "Emails, text messages, even a recorded phone call where he explicitly tells me to destroy you before you could gain influence." Leavitt replied, handing over the folder with trembling hands. Crockett scanned the documents, her posture calm, yet her aura of control intensified. "This is interesting," she said almost to herself, "but it doesn't change what you did. You could have refused. You chose to be his weapon." "I know," Leavitt whispered, the fight completely gone from her voice. I know I did, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But please don't punish innocent people for my choices. Crockett studied her silently, then slowly walked around her like a prosecutor circling a witness, the click of her heels a metronome of inevitability. You know what your problem is, Miss Leavitt, she said finally. You've never faced real consequences. You've lived your entire life in a bubble where apologizing makes everything go away, where tears equal forgiveness, where being young, blonde, and sorry is enough. I grew up differently. My mother couldn't cry her way out of an eviction notice. My grandmother couldn't beg her way into a fair-paying job. We had to fight for everything. And when someone comes for you, you don't just defend, you destroy. Representative Jordan tried to interject again. Mr. Crockett, perhaps we should. No recess, Crockett snapped. Her focus unbroken. She wanted this public televised a lesson for all to see. She pulled out the folder and read aloud a damning email from Hoffman. Leavitt is useful for now, young, ambitious and dumb enough to take the fall when needed. Keep her in front of the cameras. If things go south, she's expendable. Leavitt's face drained of color. Expendable, Crockett repeated, her tone sharp as a blade. That's what you are. A pretty face taking the bullets, while they hide, and you were so eager to please, that you didn't even see it. Crockett pulled out another document, a text from Hoffman to donor, Richard Blackstone. The Crockett hit is perfect for Leavitt. If it works, we take credit. If it backfires, she takes the fall. Win-win. Leavitt sank into a chair, powerless, her career crumbling before her eyes. Crockett had laid bare the entire machine that had used her, manipulated her, and discarded her when convenient. The White House wants to see you immediately, her phone buzzed. Leavitt's face went pale, a mixture of fear and despair. They're going to fire you, Crockett said, matter-of-factly. They're going to make you the scapegoat for this entire mess. And you know what the sad part is? You're going to let them. You'll walk out and accept whatever they tell you because that's what good soldiers do. Right? I don't have a choice, Leavitt whispered. You always had a choice, Crockett snapped. You chose to attack me. You chose to be their puppet. And now you want sympathy because the strings got cut. The room was silent, except for Leavitt's quiet sobs. Crockett leaned in, with a lethal calm. I'm not dropping the lawsuit. In fact, I'm adding Steve Hoffman and Richard Blackstone as defendants. The amount stays at $80 million. They'll pay for using you as a weapon. Leavitt looked at her, genuine fear in her eyes. You don't know what they're capable of. No, you don't know what I'm capable of. Crockett said coldly, unlike you, I didn't get here by being a puppet. I got here by being a fighter. I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. She turned to the room. Let this be a lesson. The days of destroying people for sport are over. We will fight back and we will hit where it hurts. Your bank accounts. She faced Leavitt again, a softer tone creeping in. But I'm not completely heartless. You mentioned Sarah and Tom. I'll make a deal, one-time offer. Testify under oath in court about everything. The lies, the schemes, the backroom deals, and I'll remove the staffers from the lawsuit. Walk away clean. They'll destroy me. Leavitt whispered, your career is already dead. Crockett replied bluntly, check Twitter. Press secretary meltdown. White House humiliation. You walked in here expendable, and you leave the same way, but testifying will give you something more valuable than a career. Integrity. You'll stand up to them. Finally tell the truth. Leavitt picked up her phone, seeing the headlines, viral memes, clips of her on her knees. Every humiliation amplified. She paused, realizing Crockett was wrecked. Destruction sometimes was necessary for rebuilding. She accepted the deal. Minutes later, a black SUV arrived to take her to testify. Reporters swarmed her, shouting questions she couldn't answer. She slid into the car, leaving her old life behind. On the screen inside the SUV, Hoffman was already spinning the narrative, calling her disturbed and unreliable. She had been fired via television, her career supposedly over. Yet, she had something far more valuable: control over the truth. The next morning, Committee Room 2054 was packed. Leavitt entered in a simple black suit, carrying no notes, her statement burned into memory. Every major news outlet in the world was there. She took her seat, saw Hoffman sweating, Blackstone's lawyers frantic, and Crockett giving her a silent nod of acknowledgement. Warrior to warrior, no forgiveness, just recognition. My name is Karoline Leavitt. Until yesterday, I was the White House press secretary. She began. I'm here to tell the truth about how your government really works, how information is weaponized, and how people like me are used to destroy anyone who threatens the powerful. She laid out everything. The donor-funded opposition research, the coordinated attacks, the lies, the payments to journalists, the systemic corruption. She produced documents, recordings, spreadsheets of payments, exposing the entire network of deception. By the end of her 4-hour testimony, Washington was in chaos. The Attorney General opened an immediate investigation. Senior advisors resigned. Hoffman was escorted out by federal agents. Blackstone's assets frozen. Crockett approached Leavitt quietly. That took courage, she said. No, Leavitt replied. Courage would have been saying no in the first place. This is just damage control. But my conscience isn't expendable. They shook hands. The lawsuit against staffers was withdrawn. Hoffman, Blackstone, and others would face accountability. Leavitt destroyed her career, but saved innocence and exposed a corrupt system. She walked out into the sunlight, unemployed, politically radioactive, yet finally free. 2 years later, they met at a political reform conference. Not friends, not enemies, just two women changed by experience, acknowledging the truth. You look different, Crockett noted. Stop lying for a living. Changes you, Leavitt replied. Your testimony shifted the culture, Crockett said. Young staffers aren't as willing to be weapons anymore. No, Leavitt said, but it can start an avalanche, and you started it. They parted ways, unlikely allies in reforming a broken system. United in understanding power corrupts, but accountability can redeem. Sometimes it takes someone on their knees to show everyone else how to stand tall. The story of Karoline Leavitt and Jasmine Crockett became iconic, a lesson in politics, courage and integrity.